Hey, help support the show by becoming a member on Patreon or YouTube. This is the best way to help me as a creator, and so thank you and go Cavs. We're here today to go over the Cavs offseason so far. We're going to be talking about the changes that the team has made, what they're going to look like on the court next season. And joining me to do that, we have Corey Walsh and Brandon Towers from the Land on Playback. If you've enjoyed the Fear the Sword live streams throughout the season, then you would definitely love what the Land has been doing. So make sure you're following their Playback page as well as if you aren't already. But with all that being said, here's what the Cavs have done this offseason so far. So let me see. I'm in my producer bag again. Let's share my screen here real quick. Now, I did not make any fancy graphics or anything. I literally just typed it in on Google Doc and screenshotted it, but it's going to get the job done. As you can see, here's the changes. I figured a visual representation would make it easier, right? Because the Cavs, they've been kind of busy. You know, people were joking about Kobe Altman being asleep on the job, but he's done some things. So they've lost Ty Jerome to free agency. One thing he didn't do apparently was, offer Ty Jerome anything. We'll talk about that when we get there. But they've lost Ty Jerome. They've lost Isaac Okoro via trade. They didn't bring back Chuma Okeke. They also declined the Emoni Bates two-way or qualifying offer. But he did bring in Lonzo Ball via that trade. He has signed Larry Nance Jr., bringing back Larry Nance, drafted Tyrese Proctor, and he's managed to keep Sam Merrill, and they have extended another two-way offer to Luke Travers. So those are the big moves that the Cavs have made so far. And I want to start off with Brandon. What are your immediate thoughts when you look at the changes that this Cavs team has made already?
I think it's bordering on a Kobe masterclass. I love the moves personally. I think really like being a second apron team, we didn't have a ton of flexibility. And you mentioned this is my second time joining you guys on Fear the Sword. Last time when we were sort of talking sort of end of season recap, getting into free agency, one thing that I harped on that I realized our guy Kevin over at the Block the Shot the Stop mentioned more two-way players. And by two-way, I'm not saying like two-way contracts, obviously. I mean like players that play both ends of the floor. Um, and I think like it looks to me like it's something that Kobe is prescribing to. And I absolutely love it. So I think building this route, like again, not much flexibility to make many moves for Kobe. I think both it almost works function sort of like a trade, right? And who we decided to re-sign and who we decided to trade for. So I love it. I think it's a dedication to being able to play both ends of the floor and having players that can sort of fit that mold more so than we've had here in the past couple of years.
I'll be honest with you guys. If anyone follows me on Twitter, you guys saw the crash out that I had about losing Ty Jerome. So I was very upset about losing Ty Jerome. Now we might be so back because the Larry Nance Jr. signing helped a lot. Also, not to derail the show, but I don't think the YouTube stream started. So give me 1 second.
Yep, I was going to say in the meantime, I was going to let the people know that that's actually why I'm on stream with you guys today. Was the crash out? I was sort of watching it from afar on the Twitter machine, and I was like, I got to hop on. Like I know Corey, you didn't seem to be crashing out quite as hard as you were, Tony.
No.
But yeah, I was like, man, I gotta talk my guy Tony off the ledge here on Ty Jerome, and yeah, we'll do that once we get the YouTube stream fired up. But yeah, I want to hear why you're so concerned and try and talk you off the ledge a little bit.
Yeah, everyone saw the crash out, and I thought it was funny how as soon as we got Larry Nance, I kind of calmed down, and everyone was like, "All right, Tony's back. Tony got it all out of his system."
I'll have
Yeah,
the
I'll just post
playback
this
team
bot.
take a look and make sure that nothing's going on the back end with the simulcast. So we'll take a look at that.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, it could be just my fault for maybe not getting the right stream key, but either way, we'll just carry on like nothing happened, right? So my Ty Jerome crash out. I'll start here. I'll explain this, and I'll explain why I feel a little bit better about the team. So my primary concern with losing Ty Jerome is that I don't think you can have enough 6'5" on ball creators who can get their own shot. Now I know the immediate response is, well, he wasn't creating his own shot against Indiana. I know he had a couple bad games. I hear you there. I understand. I definitely understand going like I love the Lonzo Ball edition. I want to be clear on that. I think some people misunderstood that. I absolutely love the Lonzo Ball edition. I didn't love losing Ty Jerome because technically you could have had both, right? I know the tax penalties. I understand that. I'm not pocket watching Dan Gilbert or anything, but you could have had both technically. The fact that they chose to let Ty Jerome walk, I think, is a bit unfortunate because, again, you can't have enough 6'5" creators. with that said, my primary concern is the scoring off the bench, but transitioning to, focusing more on the defensive end, especially adding Larry Nance Jr., someone who I think is going to help round out the depth. It's been a long time since they had a backup big. That made me feel a lot better because at least the Cavs are actually plugging up some holes. And if Lonzo Ball is healthy, I can see the bench being just fine without the additional scoring from Ty Jerome. I still think it would have been nice to have both, but it's something that I think Kobe Altman has done a good job of patching up. And who knows, maybe Tyrese Proctor will surprise me and be able to contribute a little bit more than I am assuming.
Yeah, I think something that's great with the bench now in general is I think what made Ty Jerome's role so important is that a lot of the bench lineups that he was in for the most part were full of, I don't want to say lesser talent, but it was definitely no one close to the ceiling of offense that he can create. And instead of having one player that's substantially more efficient on ball, like Ty Jerome, surrounded by a supporting cast that's very reliant on that, they're getting a lot of players who are good connective tissue players with Lonzo Ball and Larry Nance, and putting the team in a position where the basement is getting the lowest level that this offense can be on the bench is now getting higher. So while we did lessen the talent on the ceiling end, we're making it a much more consistent offensive output on the basement end. And that's something that we saw when in the playoffs with Ty Jerome, like you're saying, he wasn't able to create on his own in the postseason, but that's also because he went from the sixth best player on the team to having to be the second or third best player. And it's going to be harder for players to do that when Lonzo Ball and Larry Nance are providing really good depth on that end. And both acquisitions in a vacuum are really good. It was just, I think a lot of the outrage was coming from, it was viewed as this transaction of we're losing Ty Jerome for Lonzo Ball, because that's the way it was also portrayed in all of the news articles as well, as that was the decision that was being made by the Cavs brass. So now that we're kind of seeing the supplementary moves and seeing how it's evening out, it makes it more digestible. But I'm not in the position still where I'm really glad we let Ty Jerome leave for what's returned. I just feel better than I felt a few days ago.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Clearly, the team, they're trying to reorganize this roster in a way that they think makes more sense for the playoffs. The defense with Lonzo Ball and Larry Nance Jr., assuming they're healthy, that's an improvement. The Cavs, they get a little bigger, they get more athletic. And I think obviously, to me, this is kind of another bet on the core four, right? Which I think we were expecting. I don't know if we were expecting a huge trade, but basically the Cavs to me are signaling as of now that they believe this core four can win a title if they put the right supporting cast around them. So that's why they're trying to shake things up. Now, maybe we could still get a big trade at some point this summer. There's this kid from Akron who you guys might know is, kind of subtly making himself available. We'll keep an eye on that. But right now, making these kind of smaller moves on the margins, that makes me think that they believe in their starting lineup.
Chat said Steph on your kid from Akron.
Yeah, well, yeah. It could. Hey, who knows? Never count out Kobe Altman. But
Pete Nance,
Demo hitting the troll.
Go ahead, Brandon.
On Ty Jerome, yeah, I just wanted to just to set some my thought process here. I'm not a full Ty Jerome hater. A couple things up front. Ty Jerome had an unbelievable season last year. He was a legitimate 6th man of the year candidate, right? It was an absolutely stellar year from Ty Jerome. And secondarily, what I want to say is if the Cavs front office didn't even approach him to at least have an initial conversation, I feel like that's a miss. With that being said, I think a lot of your crash out that I was struggling with, Tony, was there's this notion that we need to zoom out for Ty Jerome, right? We think too much about the Indiana series. He was awesome in the Miami series. He was awesome all regular season. So I agree. Let's zoom out on Ty Jerome, but let's not zoom out to just last year. Let's zoom out all the way back to Ty Jerome's NBA career. Question for you guys. How many seasons do you think Ty Jerome has played 50 or more games in his NBA career?
2.
Yeah, that might be a decent guess. It could be even less than that, because not only did he have some injury stuff, but he also just wasn't getting many minutes. So I'll say 1. I'll be crazy. I'll say 1.
Tony, you are right. One. Last year is the first time in Ty Jerome's career at 70 games played that he played more than 50 games in his career. Ty Jerome's injury history, since we like to talk about Lonzo Ball, which is fair. Like Lonzo Ball is definitely more of an injury concern, so I don't want to say that he's not. But Ty Jerome's injury history, hip surgery is senior year of high school. It's high school, but I mean hip surgery, not great. Groin surgery in 2022, ankle surgery in 2024. So while Lonzo is certainly injury prone, Ty Jerome, if you zoom out, is as well, to a high degree. Lastly, Ty Jerome's true shooting percentage was over 62% last year, was his true shooting percentage. So when I wrap all of this up, and I think, okay, when we're looking back at the end of Ty Jerome's career, and I want to ask you guys both of these questions. How likely do you think it is that last season ends up being the best season Ty Jerome ever has? So from 0 to 100%, how likely do you think it is that his 24-25 season will, when you look back at his career, will undoubtedly be the best of his career?
I don't know if we lost Tony, so I'll start. I think that with Ty Jerome, this is definitely going to be his most efficient season of his career. I mean, statistically, this is such an outlier. It's not only within Ty Jerome, but this is a season that you look back and it looks like if you took away the points per game, the raw numbers, and looked at the splits, you would think this was one of a Steph Curry season in terms of efficiency. So do I think Steph Curry and Ty Jerome belong in the same category? No. So while I do, but it just shows you, in my mind, his capability of what he can be at his best on a night-to-night, not a night-to-night basis. Let's say hypothetically, it's probably best case game to game. He could bring that out, and that's something that the Cavs still don't really have as a replacement. And that's where my concern comes from. But in that sense, I don't think when I look back on Ty Jerome, I'm going to be wow, can't believe we gave up the consistent 50-40-90 split guy.
So I lagged severely while the question was being asked, but I did return to hear Corey comparing Steph Curry to Ty Jerome, and I agree. I think the same career path is gonna. Curry had the injuries early on too. He ended up. I'm joking, but I do think so. Yes, I would be surprised if Ty Jerome has another season as efficient as he just did. I do think, though, if he stays healthy, he could go on to have a very solid career. Now, I'm not predicting all-star seasons or anything like that, but I do think he could go on to be, this consistent off-the-bench microwave scoring guard. And again, I agree with all the limitations that Ty Jerome has. I think there's, obviously, as we just saw, a very realistic chance that he gets into a playoff series and just isn't effective with the way that teams could defend him, with how he's a little bit of a slower player and all that. But the main point.
This is a rough day.
Froze mid-main point.
This is why Tony doesn't record midday.
Am I lagging?
You're back now.
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Oh.
And now you're gone. And now you're back.
All right. How much of that rambling did you hear before I got lost?
Your main point. You froze.
Okay. My main point is that you could have had both Ty Jerome and Lonzo Ball, and you could have had Sam Merrill. You could have kept him. Now, I understand the tax penalty. I definitely understand if you had to kill him, and it's out of my control. Chat. I've been trying to play Call of Duty Warzone recently. I can't even play that. All right, there's something going on with my internet, so it's not just.
Toby's on that pilgrim wiring over there.
Listen, Ty Jerome left, and it's all been bad. All right, the Ty Jerome media team, they're paying me for this propaganda, and now they're paying someone else in Memphis. So my internet's taking a hit. But in all seriousness, yes, I agree with everything that you're saying on Ty Jerome. I do think part of the reason, okay, so I want to say this. I've seen a lot of Cavs fans who have said, oh, well, X player is just going to step up and fill that role for Ty Jerome. Or this, well, we didn't think Ty Jerome was going to be as good as he was last year. Maybe Craig Porter will do that this year, whoever else, right? I'm not picking on Craig or anybody. The point that I'm getting at here is that the reason why Ty Jerome partially was so incredible last year is because it did come out of nowhere, because that doesn't happen very often in the NBA. A player of Ty Jerome's caliber just rising up from this fringe NBA guy to a 6 Man of the Year finalist, someone who we could argue maybe even should have gotten more votes for sixth man of the year. That doesn't happen very often. And when you do get that lightning in a bottle, I would have liked to hold on to it, but I also definitely see the case if you're someone who says, well, look, it kind of crashed back to reality against Indiana. It's unlikely he's going to have a season that good again. They're pivoting to defense. They're giving Lonzo Ball a chance where if this works out, then it makes a lot of sense, especially in the playoffs, right? You have a 6'6", legitimate defensive, player, right? Like he can guard the point of attack. He can defend some wings. He's a basketball savant. He's going to get the bigs involved in a way that Ty Jerome couldn't. He's going to orchestrate the offense in a way that Ty Jerome couldn't. Sure, he's not the same scorer, but he could be a decent scorer, right? He's had some seasons where he shot the ball all right. He's definitely, like I said, that basketball genius in terms of if he's just running the offense. And let's say, for example, I know people have said, well, Evan Mobley is just going to get some more reps with the second unit now. Maybe that all pays off. There's definitely a way that all of this falls perfectly into place. And we're going Kobe Altman, the madman. He did it again. My crash out was just because at the time I was like, this is a lot of faith in Lonzo Ball. And if he's hurt, then this guard rotation looks bad, which I'm going to pull up. I had another screen share just showing you guys the rotation. While I'm doing this, with all that being said, I do still have some concerns about the guard rotation, but the fact that we have padded that front court depth a little bit makes me feel a whole lot better because when it comes to winning 16 games, I do think this current Cavs roster, if healthy, might be set up better than they were before. But speaking of all this, like we've talked a lot about Ty Jerome, and if you have any more Ty Jerome takes, you can definitely get them off. But Larry Nance Jr., he's back. He's back on a veteran minimum. We haven't had a chance to talk about that. Brandon, what did you think when we got Larry Nance back?
Love this move on a veteran minimum contract, especially when you consider it followed the Lonzo Ball move. Those guys got to play a few games together in LA before Larry came over here to Cleveland in 17-18. And I think our bench is gonna run. I mean, they have to, right? Like you bring Lonzo and Larry Nance off the bench, like that is a transition duo that should be feared coming off the bench. So yeah, I think we see this Cavs bench play with a lot of pace. And I think their offensive ceiling is actually maybe not as high as last year, given Ty would just go nuclear sometimes, right? But I think their offensive ceiling isn't terrible, like right, like off this bench. So I'm excited to see this bench get out and run in transition and honestly put some highlights on the board, man. Like we should see a few Ball to Nance in transition highlights this year is my prediction.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, like, just the thought of Lonzo Ball getting to run with this many lob threats, and I know Larry Nance isn't as athletic as he used to be, but he can still get up there. So you have Allen, Nance, and Mobley. I'm just imagining Lonzo Ball having a field day playing with those bigs. And not only that, but like even just spraying it out to the three-point line with Garland, Mitchell, Sam Merrill, who, we should add him into this too, because you're letting Ty Jerome walk, and you extended Sam Merrill. I kind of think I'm going to be, cautious on this one because I know Cavs fans seem a little mixed on Sam, but you could have a really big Sam Merrill season off the bench because he kind of had a down year, all things considered, shooting the ball. He was still good, but like this is a guy who I believe is truly elite. Like I think Sam Merrill could shoot with volume at 40%. And now that he kind of has that stable, he's getting a stable paycheck. He's been extended. His role is clearly defined. Now the team is absolutely believing in him. That might lead to him just shooting the cover off the ball. And if he does that, you'll miss Ty Jerome a little less, especially if Lonzo Ball is healthy and he's creating and Sam Merrill's coming off the bench shooting 40% and Larry Nance Jr.'s dunking on people and all this stuff is happening. Like, you could feel really good about it. So, Corey, Larry Nance Jr., he's back in Cleveland. Is this a guy who, I know a lot of Cavs fans wanted Larry Nance Jr. to begin with. Were you happy with this move?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've loved watching Tristan Thompson tweet about the current regime and crypto as much as the next guy. Great locker room guy to have around. I like my centers who can actually play in minutes. Call me crazy. So having Nance, someone who is coming off of a season where he actually was a component of the team's winning on a night-to-night basis is nice. I do, obviously, like with Nance and Ball, I feel like a subtitle of them is injury prone. So obviously there's that. But hopefully, I mean, Nance he'll probably be asked to do something similar as he had to do in Atlanta, where you're playing like 18 to 20-ish minutes a game, maybe, depending on how they decide these big minutes split. But I think it's good because it will allow Mobley to kind of have that range to go between power forward and center as like the lineup see fit. I think the Cavs are once again putting an emphasis on lineup versatility with Nance. He is not like a traditional pick and roll big back to the basket type center. He has shown even in his recent stint with Cleveland that he is capable of posing some threat to stretch the floor, which is a different element that Thompson did in that 1 year, but Allen also is not a willing 3-point participant either. So at least having that as an option is kind of like now that the Cavs in my mind can alternate between Wade and Nance in those minutes and kind of see what they're looking for on a night to night basis. But obviously positional versatility seems to be the emphasis for Altman this offseason and two-way, as you guys already pointed out.
Yeah, I wanna just list off some of these names that the Cavs have tried to play behind Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen in recent years. I did this in my YouTube video, but I want to do it here. I want to see your guys' reaction. I'm sure you remember all of them, but all right. So the Kevin Love, that one's good, right? Like we all agree Kevin Love was cool to have. Luke Cornett, that's someone who, if he had stayed around, maybe that would have been helpful, but he was only here for a couple games. Taco Fall. So we're getting, it's starting to get ugly. Not looking good. Ed Davis, who had a few moments, but wasn't a long-term thing, obviously. Moses Brown, Mamadi Diakite, Robin Lopez, Isaiah Mobley, Pete Nance. We tried a couple brothers out. Damian Jones, and Tristan Thompson, who I think surprised all of us, to be completely honest. Like, I know we don't want to trust Tristan Thompson at this stage, but there was a couple games there where we're like, wow, I thought Tristan Thompson was going to be purely a vibes guy, like the chat just said, but Tristan Thompson actually
got busted for PEDs.
Well, yeah, and then it turns out he was on PEDs, which might have explained a few things, but
that's how he didn't look so old.
that might have been
spry.
But with Larry Nance Jr., I would say pretty easily, other than the Kevin Love stint, probably the best backup big we've had in the last few years. Yeah. Especially, Corey mentioned being able to space the floor a little bit. I think he's a guy who fits both offensively and defensively. I think Larry Nance Jr. in the Kenny Atkinson system, he's got some playmaking chops to him. He's not a Jokic, he's not a Sabonis, but I trust Larry Nance Jr. to catch the ball and make a quick pass to the open man. Like, it's not going to stick in his hands. He's someone who can put the ball on the floor a little bit. He's athletic. He's got touch around the rim. He shot 44% from three last year on a very small sample size. It was only 24 games. Yeah, it was crazy. But he's a career 35% shooter. I think he just got hot. He played 24 games and was just shooting the lights out. But point is, if he even shoots, let's just say his career percentage is 35%. Let's say he's a 35% three-point shooter and he takes about 1 or 2 a game off the bench. That's more than any Cavs backup big we've had in the last 4 years. So it's going to help in that regard. Again, I mentioned the playmaking, the finishing, the play finishing, right? Like, you could this is a guy, imagine this. The Cavs have a backup big who Darius Garland can dump the ball off to, and he'll actually catch the ball. Like, it's not just going to go straight through his hands out of bounds. Like, there were times where you'd see Tristan Thompson roll to the rim and Darius hits him, and it just Tristan would catch the ball, but then he just couldn't finish the play. And you're like, yep, that's Tristan Thompson right there. So now Larry Nance Jr., this is a dude who can actually dunk the ball. He can finish around the rim. And defensively, I want to focus on this one more time. He's 6'8". He's got a 7'2" wingspan. Pretty strong dude, right? Like, he's not the strongest player in the NBA, but he's got some good size to him.
Oh, he froze.
We were on a good stretch there.
We were on a good stretch. That was a good freeze, though.
Yep.
While we're waiting for Tony to come back, I did want to touch on, I think, the biggest leap that we're all looking for next year if the Cavs are going to win a championship. Everyone probably agrees it's Evan Mobley. It's 4. But we did briefly touch on Sam Merrill there. And for me, that's actually the second guy I'm looking at. Like, I genuinely think Sam Merrill can become like poor man's Alex Caruso, something like that. And we see how important those pieces are to winning championships, like the Alex Caruso, Derek Whites of the world, where, you can be like you can either start or come off the bench. You can be a 3rd, 4th option offensively, and you can be that go-to on-ball defender, off-ball defender, jumping passing lanes and things like that. I think Sam Merrill, Cavs fans saw his defensive effort last year. I think nationally, probably went a little bit under-recognized. But like Tony mentioned, if Sam can get back to, like, we've seen the flashes of him as a three-point shooter, like we know that was his bag, right? Coming into the league was the spot-up shooting. If that can come back and he can become, like, again, that poor man's Caruso, Derek White, something like that, and Mobley takes the next step, and you've got your offensive alpha and Donovan Mitchell in the playoffs, and you can maybe stay some semblance of healthy in a weak East, man. I'm maybe way too excited about this team for it to be like July 3rd right now. I'm getting a little too hyped, Corey.
I see what you're saying with Sam Merrill. I feel like that's what the Cavs are envisioning Lonzo Ball is going to be, is that Alex Caruso type. And the only reason I say that is because I do think Sam is a good defender, like you're saying. I just think in terms of, like, when we think of Caruso's defensive chops, he is just an ultimate disruptor on the defensive end. And I think Lonzo at his best can be that. And I think Sam on the defensive end is always he is an admirable defender. Like, I think he's someone where teams think when they go at him at point of attack that they could just blow by him, and he usually shows that he can stay in front of his guy. Lonzo has the capability to kind of be that defensive disruptor, which I think it's fair to say that Sam can cover, like, the defensive capability of Ty Jerome. Like, I think Ty Jerome really kind of held his own defensively for the Cavs last year. He would get some quality steals, not necessarily be a disruptor, but just read the opposing team's offense really well. And I think Sam could definitely do that. I'm not ready to make the Sam Merrill career path be an Alex Caruso type, but I agree that I think his role will evolve with this team, whether or not, with the lack of Ty Jerome not being there, but also, like, just getting more comfortable in the offense. I feel like the coaching staff was still trying to figure out ways to get him involved last season. And we saw that with the way that his minutes kind of waxed and waned on a night-to-night basis. But he was never someone that truly fell out of the rotation either. We were, like, you would see on Cavs Twitter, people just be like, how is Sam Merrill still in the game? He's shooting like 0 for 6. And then you look at his career percent or season percentages, and they were never horrible. They were just, it felt like Sam Merrill was just missing more shots than he usually did on a night-to-night basis. So a positive regression is definitely in the work for Sam Merrill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm hoping for a big season from Sam Merrill. And I also want to say quickly again, sorry to everybody for the technical difficulties. Someone in the chat joked about me being on my phone's hotspot. Well, guess what? Now I am on my phone's hotspot, and it's actually working. So we're just doing this. We're gonna get to the finish line here. I felt like, you guys know the meme of Squidward looking out his window and he's watching Patrick and SpongeBob play. That's how I felt, because I could see the stream, but it wouldn't let me join. But so we're gonna finish this out, and I want to hit on what Corey was saying. I think this is what he was saying, because I heard parts of it. Lonzo Ball, he's a legitimately disruptive defender, right? Like, he generates steals, he gets blocks, he gets rebounds. Which, oh my God, can we just for a second talk about the Cavs rebounding? Has always been an issue. Lonzo Ball, really good rebounder for his position. Larry Nance Jr., it's not an amazing rebounder for his position, but he can rebound the ball. That is going to help a lot if both of them are healthy and available. Like, I think that makes a big difference. And Lonzo Ball actually generating turnovers, actually getting out and starting plays, right? Like I said, Larry Nance Jr. is a play finisher. Lonzo Ball is a play starter. So you get a little bit of both in these two additions from Kobe Altman. And, I love Isaac Okoro. I want to wax poetically about Isaac in a second here. Give me 1 second. I gotta start with Lonzo first. I'm going to talk bad about Okoro. I hate to do this, but we always wanted Okoro to do those little things, right? Get a rebound, actually get some steals. You're a good defender, but can you be disruptive? Can you get some steals? Can you do the dirty work? Can you dribble the ball a little bit and just create a couple plays? Lonzo Ball does all of those things, right? And Okoro just never developed to do it. And I do think, now this is where I'm going to wax poetically about Okoro, and I know Corey wrote a great story for Fear the Sword going over a lot of this stuff. You guys should check it out. But basically, the Cavs' development, their path, once we traded for Donovan Mitchell, Okoro was the one who got left woefully behind, right? Like, there was no more time to develop Okoro's on-ball game, to let him shoot three-pointers from other spots. There's the story right there. I'll pin it in the chat. Basically, Okoro was the one guy who just, for one reason or the other, wasn't able to keep up pace with how quickly the Cavs timeline shifted. And I think going to Chicago, he's only 24, maybe about to be 25 years old. There's still some talent there to Okoro. Like, I think this is a legit NBA player. I don't think this is a guy who's going to be out of the league in a year or two, hopefully, right? Like, I still think he has some tools. But there was just, once we traded for Donovan Mitchell, and especially when we made this leap last year, it's just hard to let a guy like Okoro develop some of those on-ball tools when it's clearly unpolished. It's not up to the level where he can do this on a contender yet, which, I mean, hey, maybe it never gets to that level, right? That's hard. It's hard to be a contributing player on a title team. So for Okoro, as much as I do believe in his potential still as just being like a very decent, valuable role player, it was time to move on. It was time to make a trade. And there was a long time where we thought, Okoro was going to be a negative asset to the point where you'd have to attach draft picks just to get rid of it. So the fact that you managed to get Alonzo Ball back in return, someone who actually checks all the boxes that you wanted from Okoro, while also being a little bit taller, not as strong, but a little bit taller, longer wingspan, that's a pretty big dub for Kobe Altman, right? So I know I crashed out about Ty Jerome, but when I look at what Kobe Altman has added to this team, it's two players who I think are going to help a lot. Shout out to Isaac Okoro. I will still be like, if he becomes a good player, I still get to brag about it. All right. I still get to brag about it. I still get to say, I told you so, but I do concede that it was time to move on from Okoro Island.
Win-win.
So this is where it comes into like everyone talking about like the backup point guard depth with Craig Porter Jr. and now Proctor and Tyson and just players who are going to be more on ball. I think the Cavs, if you really kind of zoom out, have struggled with player development in a lot of different ways, which I know is going to sound funny when we have homegrown players like Garland and Mobley who make all-star games. But if you look at them when they try to craft these role players, specifically ones who have been more on ball, a lot of their success stories come from players coming from the outside going in. Ricky Rubio comes to mind. We have Ty Jerome. Rajon Rondo didn't look half bad, honestly, in his time, but he was already like at the end of his career anyway.
His development was over by then.
Yeah. But like that's where I have reservations. I mean, I can't say that I've seen Craig Porter Jr. become an exponentially better player year to year. So I don't know why I'm assuming now the Cavs are going to finally devote resources to getting Craig Porter Jr. to be the player that they need him to be. Jalen Tyson, players like Proctor and Tyson, I'll believe it when I see it, but I feel like right now the Cavs are more in the business of getting hired guns to come in and kind of fill the roles. I wonder how they're going to try to solve the Ty Jerome problem, like from the offensive generation perspective, because Okoro couldn't do it. He had many years in the system, and their version of him succeeding was go stay in the corner and make your corner threes. And if they don't hit, then we haven't really been working on anything else for you. There were times where he flashed on-ball opportunity within Summer League, and even with injuries to the guards throughout the season, we would like freak out if we saw an Isaac Okoro pick and roll, and it turned into him being the screener on the pick and roll, which the numbers would show that was good for Okoro, but not good for his development. I mean, I don't think the Bulls are going to be much of a team to kind of fix him either, honestly, because they have basically an Okoro clone in my eyes with Patrick Williams, and he has been the same exact player for them for multiple seasons. I think Okoro is going to have to go to a team that will really kind of work on his on-ball skills because he's a freak athlete, and the Cavs still have a ton of freak athletes here on the roster. I mean, Craig Porter Jr., talk about Lonzo Ball rebounding. Craig Porter Jr. rebounds as if he's a power forward most nights. So I do have apprehension with their development of the younger guards. So that's something where these signings become more pivotal, like instrumental, I think, to the Cavs' depth as the season goes along, because we haven't seen much that will indicate that they have kind of turned this talent into like higher levels. Even their undrafted free agents like Dean Wade, great undrafted find. How much has Dean Wade necessarily improved at the skills he was already good at since he's been in Cleveland or rounded out his game? He's still like equally as, I guess we'll say, two-dimensional because he's a good perimeter shooter and perimeter defender. But we haven't sat here being like the exponential growth in Dean Wade's skills have really improved. So I just think it's a good note to have when we're talking about like expectations for the younger players next season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think to the Dean Wade point too, a big issue is he just hasn't really been able to stay all that healthy. And to that point, like, man, our strength and conditioning and training rooms and whatnot, they got their work cut out for him this year. Like, I hope they
Keep
hope
those
they
seats
studied
hot.
up in the keep those seats hot. You know what I mean? Like they got their work cut out for them this year because we built a bit of a hospital room with this roster, but yeah, I do agree. For the most part, I think we haven't really been able to. I think part of it is just not being able to sort of give folks the roles that we would ideally like to give them to allow them to develop. So I think, Tony, you touched on it with Ice, right? Like it wasn't a role that we were able to give him for this team because we are in a championship window. We do have championship aspirations. We don't necessarily have the luxury of allowing him the time to develop into like a good on-ball player on the offensive end of the floor. So yeah, it's sort of like a timeline issue, maybe more than anything else. And I do hope that Ice gets the opportunity to develop somewhere. I do agree, Corey. Chicago's a tough landing spot. Like, great comparison with Patrick Williams. Another, like, I feel like the Bulls fan base feels similarly about Patrick Williams as the Cavs fan base felt about Isaac Okoro, right? Like, I saw Patrick Williams photoshopped in a one-for-one trade with Caitlin Clark the other day on Twitter. They had Caitlin Clark in a Bulls jersey and Patrick in a Fever jersey. So yeah, I think that that Bulls fan base is also a little fed up with Patrick Williams. But
what a downgrade for the Fever.
Right. Chicago might have to attach a couple picks to that.
Might attach the franchise.
That lineups that are going to feature Giddey, Okoro, and Williams are going to just be that
generations.
That's going to be really tough to watch. Like,
shout out to BG in our chat, who's a Bulls fan. I know he's looking forward to that. But last point on the Okoro thing, and then I have a couple, free agency targets that we can talk about very quickly to close this off. But last point on the Okoro thing, because Kiki mentioned this and Brandon just mentioned it as well. Okoro never really played the role that he probably should have been put into coming out of college, right? Like, think about it. Who was Okoro coming out of college? He was this defensive-oriented player who maybe could develop some playmaking chops, maybe had some downhill stuff, but like really bad three-point shooter, right? And the idea is he's probably a 2. You'd probably like to put him, like, in all honesty, it did make sense when the Cavs took him, because if you just think, all right, Garland starts at the 1, Okoro at the 2, you find your small forwards, you round out your front court rotation. Okoro as your like defensive-oriented 2-man, that makes a lot of sense. Okoro kind of being forced into that 3-and-D box while also trying to play the wing when he just is not tall enough to play the wing. That was always going to be a tough box for him to fill. And I do think it's worth giving him credit. The improvements that he made on the 3-point shot, sure, he's still, stuck in the corner, but it's not, very often that you see players who are that bad at 3-point shooting. Okoro shot like under 30%, I think, his rookie year. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but he got all the way up to the point where it's like he's a 40% guy on very low volume from one spot. But like even that type of improvement wasn't guaranteed. So we worked really hard to fit a box that was just the complete opposite of the player that he was supposed to be coming out of college. And I think, Chicago probably isn't the best landing spot for him, but I do think getting out of this situation, and who knows where he goes from here, should be able to, open up the door there for him to spread his wings. And the actual last thing that I will say is this too. We can talk about the Cavs not putting him in the best position for success and development and all that. I do still think there is, that individual responsibility to figure it out. And he wasn't able to figure it out. And that's ultimately why the Cavs had to move on. So I get both sides of this here. Obviously, I'm higher on Okoro than most people. But I know a lot of Cavs fans think that he just straight up sucks. I don't agree with that, but I can understand why you were more eager to move off of Okoro if anyone in the chat is one of those people. But I'm about to pull up a list of free agents who are still available. Now, this was posted, I think, a few hours ago. I don't know if I've missed anything or not. This is just a random list that I found on Twitter. I figured it'd be easier to share it there. Hopefully you guys can all see it. Are any of these players names that interest you for the Cleveland Cavaliers? Now, I'll read off a couple of them that I think would be interesting. Al Horford, I think, would be awesome. Even with the Larry Nance edition, I would still take Al Horford just because he's another big man. He's versatile. He can shoot the three-pointer. He can defend the perimeter still at his old age. Like Al Horford, some rebounding, some toughness, some championship experience. I would love Al Horford in Cleveland. Malcolm Brogdon's a guy people have thrown around. Mo Wagner would be amazing. I would be surprised if Wagner gets the minimum, though. I'm surprised that, I guess this list isn't talking about minimum options, but I know some Cavs fans have thrown out. Yeah, Cavs fans have thrown out Wagner. I don't think we're going to be able to get him for the minimum. Westbrook is a guy who I've kind of reluctantly talked myself into. We can talk about that. And then the other person here. Yeah, well, bear with me. We'll get there.
I'm excited for that conversation.
Gary Payton, and Ben Simmons are guys who I could also listen to. But are there any names here that stick out to you guys first? We can start with Corey.
The only one that I think is kind of feasible that I could see that I think is a good fit is Chris Boucher.
Okay.
I think any Cavs fan that's watched the Cavs go against the Raptors has seen what Chris Boucher can be at his best. I think the Cavs having a center that can really mix it up and kind of stretch the floor like that is something they haven't had. And yes, it's nice that Larry Nance can shoot in the like higher 30s percentile from three, but it's on low volume. And I think Boucher is someone we've seen take 7 to 8 threes a game. And while it's like, that's something you want to have contained. I think the issue with Boucher is he's someone that, like, because the Raptors are the Raptors, they're just letting it fly and their season's usually over by like mid-season anyway. So I think it's just you want to diversify the types of player archetypes you have. And while I'd rather it be Al Horford, I've just seen that Al Horford is going to be kind of in a bidding war between multiple teams. So I think by the Cavs only having that vet minimum, that kind of eliminates us from there. And I think Wagner, like you said, is outside that range. Achua doesn't do a lot for me. And Ben Simmons also has come out and said that he doesn't want the minimum. He wants
that. Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know what team is delusional enough for that, but
he's still got a lot of leverage in the NBA, I guess.
He's got 3 summer workout videos he's waiting to release, right, and then he'll start the negotiations. So
Ben Simmons stock just goes up with every summer offseason video.
And Malik Beasley might be in prison, so Malik Beasley doesn't entertain me.
I would just remove him from the list. I don't think he's available. I don't think he's signing.
He's available for a court date.
Oh man, yeah, Brandon,
I would love to see
out to you.
Really quick, I would just love to see the Ben Simmons, Dennis Schroeder like stock graph side by side over like the last 7-8 years. It'd be a crazy one to track.
Up and down players, especially Schroeder. I mean, he's gone back and forth from. I swear, what was the deal he just signed? It's pretty good.
345.
It's like 345. Yep.
He was on like minimum deals recently, wasn't he? It's crazy.
He got traded 3 times at the deadline. I'm pretty sure.
That guy has remade himself time and time again. It's insane.
But it's also the Kings who are also looking to shop Malik Monk, who I would love if the Cavs could figure out some way to like maneuver like Dean Wade into that.
That'd be pretty great. Monk. I love Malik Monk.
Yeah. Talk about replacing some of that crazy Ty Jerome scoring. You get a Malik Monk on this team. That would be pretty good.
A name I don't see on this list because he's already basically committed to the Knicks when he does clear. Like, I was kind of interested in bringing Jordan Clarkson back to Cleveland to bring some of that bench scoring back, but it looks like the Knicks are going to grab him. As far as the rest of the names on this list, I think you guys nailed it. Like, Horford would be a lot of fun, but he's apparently already said it's basically the Lakers, Golden State, or nowhere. And with LeBron's situation, I bet he's probably really thinking Golden State or nowhere. Mo Wagner is really the name on the list that I would really want, but again, I think he's just going to be too expensive. Outside of that, I really can't get behind making a push for any of these names. And I don't know if we want to make the segue now, but Tony, I am fascinated to hear why you're in on Russell Westbrook.
Okay, so let me preface this and be clear. I wouldn't describe myself as in on Russell Westbrook, but I want to make the case. All right. Now, I'm not saying that I'm signing off on this, but I just want to make the case, right? It's an 82-game season. We got guys who availability is a concern. We don't know if anybody on this bench, like if Lonzo Ball gets hurt, if Larry Nance Jr. gets hurt, where are we getting the intensity from? Where are we getting the scoring from? Where are we getting any sort of juice off the bench without Ty Jerome? If there's one thing you can say about Russell Westbrook, it's that he plays hard. He plays with a lot of intensity, almost to a fault. So, like, if you got Russell Westbrook as purely an 82 games innings eater, he's going to come off the bench. He's going to provide that excitement. He's going to run, baseline to baseline nonstop for as long as he's out there. He's going to grab rebounds. He's going to create plays. He's going to piss you off plenty of times by doing really silly things too. But I do think he's a guy who, this has kind of always been the issue with Westbrook, is that he impacts winning so much at the cost of like almost losing you games at the same time. And so as purely a guy who comes off the bench every once in a while in the regular season, if he was willing to take that role, which I have no idea if he'll even take the minimum to come to Cleveland, right? But if you have that guy as purely a regular season guy, I think he could help a lot. You just have to make sure that he's not on the floor in meaningful moments in the playoffs, because that's a train wreck we've seen too many times. So Westbrook, he's not like, if I had to, I won't rank them, but the names who I would take before I would take Westbrook are Horford, Brogdon. I mean, Wagner would be awesome. Boucher is like a better. I would rather have him than Bol, to be honest with you. We haven't even mentioned Bol. I know some people are still holding out hope. I'm good on that. I would even take Ben Simmons before I took Westbrook, probably, although I do think the availability factor would help a lot, right? Like, that's really the main thing. Is I'm like, this is a guy who can play a whole bunch of, backup minutes if needed. And I also shout out Gary Payton II. I don't think he'll come to Cleveland. I think he's a little too undersized for how many guards we have already, but I've always loved him as a role player. I've always been a big fan. Just a defensive bulldog, helps a lot. If you added him as, again, just like, hey, we're not sure how healthy Lonzo's going to be, we need another option here, wouldn't mind Gary Payton. And look, if Malik Beasley beats the case, there's a spot for you in Cleveland. But I'm not counting on that, because I've seen some very incriminating,
convincing clips.
I've seen some very incriminating things.
Listen, that man looks like he was like he turned into a demon trying to get that full court, run the full length of the court for that layup with 5 seconds.
Hey, when the line's crazy. 7.5, you got to go for it.
Got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do. It reminded me a little bit. The Westbrook, I can understand where you're coming from with Westbrook. It's like I could see a scenario where if we do fall victim to some injuries, Demo mentioned it too. We don't have the most healthy sort of guard situation right now over historically. It does kind of feel like the reasoning there is kind of like back in the day when John Gruden, I don't know if you guys remember this, asked the Colts offensive coordinator, what happens? It's what's your backup quarterback situation like? And he told John Gruden, he's like, listen, if 18 goes down, we're screwed, and we don't practice screwed. That kind of feels like the Westbrook situation. It's like, if you are relying on that of Russell Westbrook to bail you out of that situation, you're probably screwed anyway. So is it really worth it? It's kind of my point, but I do completely get it. Feels like we got a bit of a roll of the dice on our hands this year with who's going to be healthy and who's not.
I also would say it's quite interesting that Russell Westbrook, for being a Hall of Fame player, has now turned into this hired assassin for teams. But it turns out by the end of the season, he usually ends up killing the regime that he's a part of. Because, I mean, the Nuggets, I remember from that excerpt, their main gripe was that Malone was playing Russell Westbrook so much. So I feel like wherever Russ goes at this point, I don't know if I want the Cavs kind of stepping in that. I appreciate that Russell Westbrook's going for the uniform rainbow collection right now, but I don't need to see wine and gold in that rainbow right now.
That's fair enough. I won't fight you on that. The chat asked, what if we let all players bet on games? And I think if you were only allowed to bet on the overs for your team and the unders for your opponent, I'll do it. Let's see some competitiveness, right? It's like, all right, I took
bring that to the All-Star game
under. Now I got to defend him and hold him under it, right? Bring it to the All-Star game. There you go. They can bet on the All-Star game. That'll get guys to be a little competitive, right? I'm halfway joking.
I honestly don't think that idea is that insane.
You lose half your paycheck if you don't win the All-Star game.
Right.
You have to bet at least half your salary.
Everyone is required to. There are back. Yeah, okay, that's true, Demo. There are the backdoor deals you could make. So, that's why, we can't have anything nowadays. But
God damn it, Demo. What the hell, dude?
Apparently we won't have anything anyway with the big beautiful bill coming across. Looks like sports betting might be taking a hit.
Oh no.
Might be taking a hit as is. So
this is why I needed Ty Jerome back. I'm like, I just needed one reason for hope in my life, that there is a good billionaire out there willing to pay the price, to pay the tax, to help the working man. I want to see Ty Jerome in a Cavs uniform. I'm joking, but yeah, this has been a fun conversation, guys. Really, I know we had some technical difficulties pretty much on my end, but thank you guys for bearing with it. Thanks to the chat for bearing with it, and whoever watches this on YouTube, whatever Frankenstein edit together to make this more normal.
On the live YouTube stream. Shout out to Tony's internet provider.
Yeah, seriously. Shout out to my hotspot, because this has been flawless since I switched
Thanks,
to
Mint
it.
Mobile.
Brandon, thanks for joining. I know everyone's probably already familiar with the Land on Playback, but get your plug in. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, playback.tv /the land. just a bunch of guys that love Cleveland sports, just like these folks over here at Fear the Sword. So really appreciate you guys having me on. It's always a blast. Would love to do it again anytime you guys will have me.
Of course, yeah. We got plenty of off-season ideas. We're definitely going to hit you up and have you back because these conversations are a lot of fun. So again, thank you to everyone who watched or on Playback Live or on YouTube later. Really appreciate you. We'll have more videos coming soon. And with all that being said, go Cavs.
Go Cavs.